You know, sometimes it just feels like planning to read a book is just as fun as reading the book itself. Hey BookTube, something different today. A list of series I plan to read, at least starting to read this year. So yeah, well, I plan to read a lot of standalone novels this year. There are also a few series I want to start. And so the first one I've technically already started, which is the Stephen King Dark Tower series, which is part of his larger multiverse. And so I've already read Salem's Lot, and I'm reading my second novel of him, which is The Stand. Both these books have a impact in some way into his bigger series, The Dark Tower. The first book was released in 1982, called The Gunslinger, and this is a fantasy, western, sci-fi and horror series. So it's a lot of things, and hopefully it's also very good. But guessing on the first books I've read by Stephen King, he seems to be an okay writer, at least. But yeah, this series is about a gunslinger who is traveling towards the Dark Tower, where he wants to do something. And he is chasing a dark figure who plans to do the same, and he basically has to get there before him. This series is not for everyone. A lot of people don't seem to like the ending or just the series in general, so I don't know. We'll have to see, I guess. Another fantasy series I want to start to read is the Rift War saga, or the Rift War cycle, which starts with a magician book, which was a standalone. The series was written by Raymond E. Feist, and he also has a few books who he co-wrote with other authors. So yeah, it starts with Magician, which was planned as a standalone based on like a D&D adventure he did. It also has like some sci-fi elements where this fantasy world is invaded by aliens from another world that come through certain portals and they invade. Well, our main character is a magician in training, and so he basically has to learn during this war. And it started out as a standalone, and then quickly, like many fantasy books and series of this time, it started in the 80s, it became a trilogy, and later on more trilogies and more books were added, and it became this big series. I believe it has like 30 books at least, so enough to read about. Yeah, this series was highly recommended by some other booktubers, including Dutch Greybeard and Nev on Nev's book channel, where I highly recommend as booktubers as well. So I'll put their channels in the description below. But yeah, they're highly positive of the series, and so I kind of decided to read it as well, see what it's about. Another fantasy series I plan to start is Memory, Sorrow and Form by Ted Williams. This is a trilogy about a kingdom where the king passes away and he has two sons who are vowing for the king for the throne. And there's also a neighboring land who wants to invade them and sees this as a great opportunity to do so. Well, this is seen as like a series which bridges between like the classic old fantasy and the more modern fantasy, like, well, it's inspired A series like A Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin. And so yeah, I'm curious to see what it's about. I don't know much about it. I know there are like multiple POV characters in here. But yeah, and I know the long series of long novels. I know the last book in the trilogy is like 1600 pages, so enough to read. Yeah, I'm curious to see what it's about. Still another fantasy series I want to try is The Legend of Drizzt by R.A. Salvatore, which is inspired by a D&D campaign. It takes place in the D&D world, and it starts with the Icewind Dale series trilogy, in which Drizzt is one of the characters, and he's like a dark elf, a drow from the Underdark, and drows in the D&D lore are like evil, like an evil race, but he's like a good guy, and so he like abandons the place, the Underdark, to go to the upper world, kind of like our world, and well, he wants to live there, live a good life. Drizzt was like one of the favorite characters from this Icewind Dale series, and so he got like his own series in which he became the main character. So yeah, it turns into like a 30 plus series as well, so big series. And then also some more sci-fi, of course. I'm reading a lot of standalone sci-fi, but there are also some series I want to try, and one of them is the Enders series, Enders Saga by Orson Scott Card, which obviously starts with the Enders game, which is a well-known sci-fi book, written in 1985, and this is more like a YA military sci-fi in which humanity is having a huge war against alien invaders, and so they are recruiting and training these teenagers to become soldiers and fight and control spaceships and stuff, and so they can fight these aliens. And well, it's a well liked book, and it's part of a duology, and then later it was written also into a bigger series, the Ender series. There was like the Shadow series, which I don't know much about, but yeah. Another sci-fi series is the Vorkosigan series, which is written by Lewis McMaster Bujold, and this is more a character-focused series about, well, it's more a space opera which takes place in the future where humanity has expanded into the galaxy, and humanity has kind of split into two parts, which have different ideologies, and they're basically at war with each other. And so we follow like two characters one from each side, a man and a woman, and they end up falling in love. So there's a bit of romance here, and also a lot of action, and like I said, more character focused. And this is also a large series, and this one is highly praised by Ben from Genghis Khan, fellow booktuber, who has like all 4 stars for this series. So looking forward to this one. Finally, another one is the Culture series by Ian M. Banks. This is a 10-part series, which are all standalones, which take place in this big culture universe, which is considered one of the biggest written sci-fi universes out there. This also takes place in the future where humanity lives in a utopia which is ruled by an AI. And so you have like 10 stories taking place in this universe. Usually when humanity is ruled by AI, it's more like a bad thing. But it seems in this series it's a positive thing, so... But yeah, these are some of the series I want to start. It seems like a lot, but at least gonna try the first book, see if I like it, and continue if I want to. And enough to read about. I'm curious to if you've read any of these series, maybe you are reading one at this time, let me know what you think of them. Let me know what you're gonna read. I always enjoy reading your comments, and yeah, it's fun. And so, well, until next time, bye.